How's it? I'm Gordon from SSW, and here's a Git tip on making content and structural changes in your Git repos. Okay, so I have a rule here on avoiding redundant linking, and I need to make a bunch of changes to this. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy across the changes. Well, I suppose before I do that, I need to make a branch. So to create a new branch, I'm going to go ahead and type git checkout -b rule change. That's going to give me a new branch. If we look at the changes that we've got here already that I've just pasted in, you can see there's a bunch of changes across the whole file. But now one of the things that we also do with our rules is that when we change the URL, we also change the folder that this sits in. So I'm going to go ahead and change this folder as well. See, we got our new folder, our rule changes. And if we go ahead and stage these changes before we commit, you can see that this goes in as an add and a delete. And the reason for that is that there's too many changes in the file for the Git system to detect that as a file rename. So how can we avoid this? So if we unstage those changes, and then I'm going to go ahead and grab the old URL again and rename that back. We'll do one commit, that is content changes. And then we'll go do a second commit, which has our URL changes in it. Well, our folder changes, so our structural change. So again, this shows up as two changes. Once we stage it this time, we see it as a rename. We go here and say folder change. Okay. But now we don't always have to do this as two separate commits. So if we're making small changes, so say in this case we're just doing a rename for this URL, we can go and say this is the new URL. As part of our changes, we're obviously going to put this in our redirects, so we put that there as well. And then we go and say this needs to be new. So yeah, we've got similar changes to the last time. There's full structural and content changes, but this is detected as a rename, and that's because there's minimal changes to the file, so the system's able to detect that as a rename. So yeah, we say changing both. So it's just something you have to be aware of when you're making changes. If you're making a lot of changes, stage it first, see if that comes up as a rename. If it doesn't come up as rename, you might want to undo your folder changes, do a commit with your content, and then change it back. But what about your PR changes, I hear you say? Well, if we take a look at our file changes, you can see that it shows as an add and a remove. Well, this kind of sucks, right? But remember, the purpose of multiple commits is that our reviewers can review each commit with its own context. So in this case, our reviewers can come over here and they can see I made some content changes, I then did a folder change, and then I changed both. So if they go look at the content changes, they can see that this is all the different changes I made. Then if they go back to commits, they can see, well, this is the rename that I made. So for the folder change, I changed this to this folder. That's all good. And then I changed both. So in this case, they can see, okay, well, I did rename the folder here, and that looks good. I added the redirects, everything looks good. And then they can go ahead and approve this PR. So although the file changes tab doesn't look too great for a reviewer, them falling back on the commits and you being very diligent with the commits that you make can help them have a great reviewing experience. This has been Gordon from SSW. Cheers.